Hello and welcome to this just-in-time training. My name is Dejan Stanic and today I will be guiding you through the process of bootstrapping VM-Series image in AWS. And here is our agenda. We shall start by going through the requirements, then we will walk through the preparation process, and lastly we will bootstrap an image. Bootstrapping a firewall in AWS requires access to the console or the CLI. We will be using the AWS console for this demonstration. You will also need access to a PenOS 8.1 image, and if you would like to use Bring Your Own license, then you will need a valid VM-Series Auth code. Lastly, for bootstrapping to work, you will need an XML firewall configuration file and an Init-cfg.txt file. Overall bootstrapping process in AWS can be divided into three simple steps. As a first step, we will create AWS S3 bucket and upload Bootstrap package. Once this is finished, we will proceed to step 2 and create IAM role with inline policy, which we will be using during the step 3, as it will enable read access from EC2 to the S3 bucket that was created in the step 1. And lastly, in step 3, we will deploy the firewall. Welcome to the most interesting part of our session, where we will go through guided demonstration of bootstrapping process in AWS. Once we have successfully logged in to AWS console, we can proceed with the step number 1, which is creation of S3 bucket and corresponding folders and upload of bootstrapping content. So what we need to do here, we need to select S3 under storage, create bucket, provide unique name for our bucket, which I have pre-created, select the region and say create. Once this is done, you will see the name of your bucket here in the list, and when you select it, you will be able to proceed and create the folders. So we will start by selecting create folder, naming this folder as a config, and then creating the next one, which is called content. The next will be license, and the last but not least definitely will be software. And here we have all the folders which we need for successful bootstrapping process. So there is just one more thing which we need to do, and that is to upload the content which we created in advance, and we will do that by selecting config folder, upload, add files, and then going to our folder on our computer with the different things which we prepared, and under config we have two files for this demonstration. One is called bootstrap.xml, another is init-cfg.txt. So these two files are holding configuration files, where bootstrap.xml is a config file of the firewall, and init-cfg holds different additional values, such as the name of, let's say, VM-Series, for example, panorama, IP address, and various other. So we will say here open and upload, and in a couple of seconds we should be able to get these files ready, and there they are. And now we can go back and add the rest of the content. For our exercise, we will be using Bring Your Own license image, and we want to use also that licensing model. So we will need to select license folder and upload a file which is called Auth Codes. And there it is. Auth Codes file needs to have Auth code inside, which is a bundle licensing code for VM-Series. So we will say here open and upload, and once this is ready, pretty much we have everything needed for this demonstration. Additionally, if you would like, you can add content and software. Under content you can add, for example, threat prevention content update. Under software you can add the updated version of PenOS. But please note that if you do that, it will affect a little bit the time of provisioning of your instance, because it needs more time to install all of this. And with this, we have concluded our first part. So now we can proceed to step number 2. And in this step, we will be creating IAM policy and role, which will allow us to have EC2 accessing S3 bucket with our config content and license and software, which is needed for bootstrapping process. To do this, we will go and select IAM under Security, Identity and Compliance section. And there we will start first by creating a policy. By selecting policy, we will get this view, or let's say editor, and instead of clicking and defining the things, we will automate a little bit this process by selecting JSON, select all, and then you can find in a complimentary demo guide, which is published together with this video, or on a portal, on our documentation portal, you can find this piece of code which will automate this configuration. So when we select this, we will go back and paste it, and then we have one more step, and that is to change bucket name with the name of S3 bucket that we are using. So to do so, the easiest way is go back to your S3 bucket, select it in here, and copy it. That way we avoid typos. So now we will delete this part and paste it, and then again we will delete the second part and do one more paste. So there we are. We will say review the policy, and now that we covered this part, there's only one thing which is left to finalize creation of this policy, and that is to provide the name for it and to say create. So here we created our initial policy, and now we will move to the roles, and we will say here create new role. So this role is related to EC2, so we will select the service that will use it, and that's going to be EC2. Then we will say next, and under the, let's say, attach permissions policy, we need to find the policy which we previously created. So if we go to the search and paste the name, we will find it, and once we select it, we will just say next. So here we will give it a name, and we will call this like this, and we will say create role. So there we are, we have it, and we can see it in here. So now to finalize this process, only one more thing is needed. We will select this, and as you can see here, our first initial policy that we created is a managed policy, and we need inline policy. So to create this, what we will do now, I'm gonna first copy the name, and then I'm gonna say here add inline policy. After that, we will select import managed policy, put into the search tab the name of managed policy, we will say import, and then again review the policy, paste, and maybe I can just call it inline, and say create. So now we have inline policy, as you can see it here, and also we have managed policy. As we don't need any more managed policy, we will say here detach, and now we've finished step number 2 and can proceed to the final part, which is deployment of VM-Series. And finally, here we are ready to deploy our VM-Series next generation firewall in a quite automated fashion by using bootstrapping. So what we are going to do now, we will select EC2, and there we will say launch instance. Of course, there are various options which we have here, and the one which we need is to select AWS Marketplace, and then what we can do is we can type Palo Alto and of course do the search, and we will get all of our images that are available in the marketplace, including panorama. So here you have options to use bundle 1 or bundle 2, or for example you can use bring your own license. Since I have Auth Code in place, I will use BOL, and to proceed I'm gonna do select. We will review this part here. We will say continue, and then you can keep the default one, which is m4.xlarge, extra large instance, or you can change it. For me this is enough. I'm gonna say here next. This is the most important part to get the things done correctly. So what we need to do here, first we need to define the number of instances. I will be deploying only one. Then we need to select VPC in which we are going to deploy VM-Series next generation firewall. So in my case I have pre-created AWS JIT VPC, so I'm gonna select that. In case you didn't do this, you can go and say create new VPC and then set up all the details accordingly. Once we have this, we will select then subnet. I have lots of subnets in here, so I'm gonna select management. Additional note to add, please make sure to select auto assign public IP as enable if you are going to use, let's call it internet connected scenario, where VM-Series will run API calls in the process of bootstrapping and booting and try to license itself by contacting our licensing servers. So here I'm gonna say enable, and then very important part, you remember our step number 2, IAM role. Here we need to select proper IAM role, which will allow connection from this EC2 deployment to S3 bucket. So we will say here in the drop down menu, and if we look in here, you will find lots of these, but you remember the last one which we just created, which is called AWS Bootstrap JIT VM-Series role. I'm gonna select that one. So by doing that, we are actually finished with this part in here, and there's only one more thing which we need to do. So if we go a little bit down, this is also very important. We need to select advanced details, and here we need to paste a piece of code which will instruct the process to connect to the bucket. So you can see here we have this string which is called VM-Series Bootstrap AWS S3 bucket equal, and then we need to provide S3 bucket name. So again, the best way, let's go back to our bucket, copy it, and then we replace this part with this. So when we finish with this part, we actually prepared everything we need to instantiate VM-Series and to get the bootstrapping process as a part of the provisioning. So now we can say review and launch, but my advice is go with the next up to the security group, and here please don't leave it open to pretty much everyone, as this is our management interface. So change this IP address to your IP address from which you are going to access this machine, public IP address. In my case, because this is really just demo and I delete everything after this recording, I'm gonna leave it as it is for the sake of simplicity. So we will say here review and launch, and as you can see here, we are pretty much ready to proceed, and we will say launch. We will need to select key pair, and I'm gonna use existing one, and we will say launch instance. So now what is basically happening, we started deployment of our VM-Series on AWS, And as a part of this deployment, we are going to use a bootstrapping process, and we should end up with a virtual machine which is fully licensed, which has loaded configuration, and which is pretty much ready to go. So for the sake of time, I'm gonna pause this recording at this stage, and once virtual machine is completely instantiated and our firewall is up and running, we will continue and review the final result. Okay, so we are back again, and finally our instance of VM-Series is completely deployed and the process has finished. So what we can see here, I went to EC2 dashboard and selected Instances tab, and I filtered everything with the ID of our instance, and there we can see the details. So we have it up and running. It is M4 extra large, it is in US East, and most importantly there is a public IP of our management interface. So now what I can do here, I can select this public IP and then go and access our VM-Series. So we will do that. We will copy it, open the new tab, and then do HTTPS and paste it. So if everything went correctly, and as it should, after we log in, we should be able to see all the details and that our firewall is licensed and configuration loaded. So I'm just going to put the credentials which are part of my configuration file, and the fact that it is logging in means that everything actually went correctly. And now let's have a look to some details on our firewall. So as you can see here, as a first step, let's check the licensing. So we have the name PAVM, serial number, and of course CPU ID and UUID. But most importantly, if we have a serial number, it means that it has been licensed. To check this, of course, in more details, we can come here and select licenses, and as you can see here, everything is loaded. So first part completed successfully. Secondly, to check, let's have a look policies, and here you can see that all kind of policies which I had in my configuration file are loaded. If we look into the NAT rules as well, and with this, I think we did a really great job, and we managed to have successful process of bootstrapping of our VM-Series. And with this, I would like to thank you very much for listening. Share final recommendation, which is to go and have a look in our step-by-step demo guide, and please don't hesitate to share your feedback with us.